She's the loves of my life. The first time I ever came across what the word love was really all about was that very first kiss. I recall it well. It made me go all the dither, it did. It was with this Elsie Cartwright at the back of the Gospel Hall, after which sang All Things Bright and Beautiful together on one of those Praise the Lord Sunday schools we used to go to in those days. She was a very nice kisser, was Elsie. Her breath always smelt of sherbet lemons, it did, which added to the allure of things, as they were my favourite sweets too. Elsie, I later learned, had married a visiting Baptist minister from Jamaica, who, according to my mum, was a wonderful sermoniser. I thought I must have been, because now they've got 3 kids together and living happily in Kingston Town. Still, Elsie was good while she lasted, and I wish her all the best, I do. In amongst many of my other passing fancies was another one that stuck in my mind. She was a lass called Maureen from Cleckheaton. I was just 18 at the time and having one of my first legal pints while playing a game of darts in the tap room of the Nag's Head with a few of my mates. And you know, I was just stood at the bar waiting my turn to throw. When it happened, I nearly choked on my pork scratchings, I did, because at the other side of the bar in the lounge was this lass. Well, I tell you, as soon as I clapped eyes on her, I was well smitten, I was. It was that smile she aimed at me across that there bar that did it for me. Never threw another dart that night, because I moved myself into the lounge bar where I stood munching my pork scratchings, pretending not to notice her. But I bloody well did, especially now I'd seen the legs that were attached to the top half of the body that had caught my eye earlier. Well, it turned out she's out celebrating her mum and dad's some anniversary or other. She was drinking Portello, as she was just 17 at the time. Well, I could hardly believe it. On her way to the loo, she cheekily pinched 2 delicate fingers full of my pork scratchings. Hardly believing my luck, taking the hints, I sort of dawdled outside of the ladies till she appeared after doing what she had to do. No words were exchanged. None were needed as we both sauntered our way into the pub car park, where we indulged in the most beautiful heavy petting known to man. Yet just as I was eagerly getting into the way of things, she abruptly disentangled, saying, "I'd better get back or they'll be wondering where I've gone." With that I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't, believe me it wasn't. Once I'd had a taste of her, there's no way I was letting go. Anyhow, 6 months that liaison lasted. Pure bliss it was, until she went off to Newcastle University, then off to some medical school in New York. And I've heard through the grapevine she's now called Dr. Alice, and she's married to some American heart surgeon, and they've got 2 kids they have. Oh well, it was so good while it was lasted. She was a clever lass, was Alice. Missed her in the beginning, I did, but I didn't mourn her passing for long, because as I recall, it was about 2 weeks later when I walked into the Nags, when I tell you I could hardly believe my eyes, because behind the bar stood this vision of all things bright and beautiful, a brand spanking new barmaid, who had started that very day. As soon as we clapped eyes on one another, beat it off like a house on fire we did. She knew it and I knew it. But unfortunately, there was a slight little fly in the ointment on account of her being married and having 3 kids and all. Never messed with married women before, but had to make this one the exception to the rule. 2 months it lasted. She used to pop over to my place for half an hour after calling time, "Gentlemen, please." Until that is one night, there was a knock on the door at her usual time. Only this time it wasn't she, it was he, her husband, who was built like a gable end. A man of few words he was, but his message was loud and clear, which resulted in me having 2 panda-like black eyes that took nigh on a month to clear. Didn't dare to venture into the Stags during this convalescence period, and when I did, she wasn't there anymore, which was just as well, I thought. After that little liaison, I sort of laid low for a while. I had grown to enjoy the peacefulness of my new celibate way of life. Even contemplated getting a cat, that sort of thing. Until, well, it was like this, you see. She worked in Poshnosh, she did, which is our local pizza takeaway place. Used to get mine free delivered, until one night after I'd been out on the town, I thought, I might as well pop in and get my own. Anyhow, there I was, just stood in the queue, along with a dozen or so of the similarly inclined, minding my own business, googling away on my phone. Then, when it was my turn at the counter, without taking my head up from the phone, I mumbled, 1 margarita, extra onions and mushrooms. What did you say? The voice said, after which I repeated my previous mantra, to which she again replied, what did you say? At this, I lifted my head from the phone and gazed at the person before me, looking for some sort of clarification as to this impasse. Well, she just stood, arms folded, as though standing her ground, until she said, have you forgotten how to say please? Even though I was severely under the weather, that withering look told me she's in no mood for any further negotiation. Then the penny dropped, and I hastily repeated my order with the added appropriate pleases, to which she replied, certainly, sir, then screamed out the back, 1 number 10 with extra 2 and 3, which I couldn't help but notice she never said please. But that splitting hairs, I thought, best not mention it. That would be £4.50, sir. Meekly I proffered her a £5 note and shyly said, keep the change, to which she replied, thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure serving you, as she bunged me the cardboard-clad pizza. When I arrived home, I turned on the telly, grabbed a knife and fork from the kitchen and opened the box to reveal the still piping hot pizza, which I couldn't wait to get my teeth into. Starving I was. But what did it for me was that little note on top of it that said, so pleased to meet you. Thank you, Linda. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Well, I ask you, what was any red-blooded man to make of that? As I was munching my way through the pizza, my imagination was going into overdrive. I'd already noticed that there was no ring on the third finger. Nice looker she is too, I thought, even with her hair covered in one of them there catering hats. And even under that white smock she was wearing, I couldn't help but notice a fine female form straining to be released from this unfair confinement. If only I'd known she was there before, I wouldn't have been ordering no deliveries on the phone, that's for sure. Well, that's it. Pizza again tomorrow night for me. But this time there'll be no messing about. Straight after I've had a few pints after work, then I'll try one of the swooning sultans. The ones that are £2 dearer than the other ones. Don't want her to think I'm one of those watching the pennies type of blokes. Want her to think I've got a bit of class, I do. Think I'll nip home before I go there and put on my new Adidas hoodie, so I look a bit cooler than I already do. Must say that pizza was bloody lovely. I tuned into Sky Sport, stretched out on the couch, with no washing up to do. What more can a man ask for, I ask you? After which I crawled into bed and a very pleasant dream indeed, the likes of which I hadn't had since I was about 16 or thereabouts. Such was the effect that Linda at Poshnosh had upon me. Well, all that was about 5 years ago. And one thing just led to another. Now we're married with 3 lovely kids, 1 boy and 2 girls, Alan, Claire and Rose. When I proposed to her, I got down on one knee, I did, and said, will you marry me? To which she replied, will you marry me what? To which I replied, will you marry me please? Then she said, I certainly will, thank you for asking me. It's about the loves of my life I've had in the past, multitudes, you know.